Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Jasper Jax Hollis drummed his fingers against the mahogany desk in his study, watching the security feed from the garden, where his daughter's wedding planners scurried about like ants. The massive tent structures were taking shape, transforming his private sanctuary into what his wife, Eleanor, insisted would be the social event of the season. His head throbbed. Another headache. They had been coming more frequently lately. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, minimizing the security feed window on his laptop. Eleanor glided in, perfectly coiffed in a designer suit that probably cost more than what most people made in a month. "Darling, the florist needs your approval on the final arrangements." She paused, studying his face. "You look tired." "I'm fine," Jax replied, standing. At 52, he still cut an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that had only grown more distinguished with age. "Just work stress. The merger with Singapore is taking longer than expected. You should let Preston handle more of it," Eleanor suggested, reaching out to straighten his tie. "He's been asking to take on more responsibility." Jax caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "I prefer to keep my eyes on things myself." He released her, noting how quickly she withdrew her hand. "Where's Prey, anyway? I haven't seen him all morning." "Oh, he's been helping Jenna with some last-minute details. He's such a dear friend to this family." "Indeed." Jax watched his wife's face carefully. After 25 years of marriage, he knew every micro-expression, every tell. There was something in the way she avoided his direct gaze. Something in how her fingers fidgeted with her wedding ring. The headache intensified. "I should get going," Eleanor said. "Dr. Thorne called earlier. He wants you to come in for a follow-up on your blood work." "Did he say why?" "Just routine, I imagine. I made you an appointment for tomorrow at 9. Jax nodded, already reaching for his phone to make a note. "Tell the florist whatever they proposed is fine. I trust your judgment." Eleanor smiled, but there was something mechanical about it. "You always have." She turned to leave, her heels clicking against the floor. "Eleanor." Jax called after her. She paused at the door. "Yes? Is everything all right?" A beat of silence. "Of course, darling. Why wouldn't it be?" The door closed behind her, and Jax immediately pulled up the security feed again. He switched to the camera covering the East Wing corridor, watching as Eleanor walked away. She pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. Within minutes, Preston Prey Cole emerged from the direction of Jenna's wing, intercepting Eleanor in what they probably thought was a blind spot. Jax leaned forward, increasing the volume. "Getting suspicious," Eleanor was saying, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's always suspicious," Prey replied. "It's what makes him successful. But he trusts us. That's his weakness." They moved closer together, Prey's hand brushing Eleanor's arm in a gesture that could appear innocent to a casual observer. But Jax wasn't a casual observer. He was a predator who'd built an empire by recognizing patterns others missed. The feed cut out suddenly, a technical glitch or deliberate interference. He couldn't be sure. Jax sat back, his jaw tight. The headache was now a steady drumbeat behind his eyes. His phone buzzed, a text from his daughter. "Daddy, can we talk about the prenup thing? Mom says you're being unreasonable." Before he could reply, another wave of nausea hit him. He'd been feeling progressively worse over the past few months, but had attributed it to the stress of the merger and Jenna's wedding preparations. Now, watching the pieces move on the board, a different possibility began to take shape. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Hollis, Dr. Thorne is online. He says it's urgent." Jax picked up the phone. "Eris, what's wrong?" "Jax, I've been reviewing your latest blood work." The doctor's normally calm voice held an edge of concern. "There are some irregularities I'd like to discuss in person. How soon can you come in?" "I have an appointment tomorrow at 9. "Good. And Jax, have you made any changes to your diet or medication recently?" "No." "Why?" A pause. "Let's discuss it tomorrow." In the meantime, pay attention to what you eat and drink, and maybe keep a log of any symptoms you experience. Jax's gaze drifted to the half-empty coffee cup on his desk, the one Eleanor had brought him earlier. I will. Thank you, Eris. He hung up and opened his laptop again, pulling up the specs for a comprehensive home security upgrade. If his suspicions were correct, he'd need eyes and ears everywhere. The order would be rushed, installed tonight under the cover of wedding preparations. A message popped up from Prey. Drinks later. Need to discuss the Morrison account. Jax typed back. Can't today. Feeling under the weather. The response came quickly. That's not like you. Everything okay? Just tired. Jax closed the laptop and stood, walking to the window. Below, wedding planners continued their frantic preparations. Eleanor was there now, directing workers with imperious gestures, while Prey looked on from the sidelines. As if sensing his gaze, Eleanor looked up toward his study window. Jax didn't move back from the glass. Let her see him watching. Let her wonder what he knew. His phone buzzed again. Jenna, please call me, Daddy. About the prenup? He texted back. No discussion needed. The prenup stands as is. Jenna had been different lately, more defiant, more entitled. Eleanor's influence, no doubt. He tried to raise his daughter to understand the value of hard work, but Eleanor had always undermined those lessons, encouraging Jenna's worst impulses. The security company confirmed they could begin installation within the hour. Good. By tonight, every room in the house would be under surveillance. He'd find proof of what his instincts were already screaming at him. A knock at the door. Come in. It was one of the housekeepers. Sir, Mrs. Hollis asked me to bring you fresh coffee. She said you weren't feeling well. Jax smiled, all warmth and gratitude. Thank you, Maria. Please tell my wife I appreciate her thoughtfulness. He took the cup but didn't drink. Actually, would you mind taking this old cup to be washed? He watched as she left with his untouched coffee from earlier. Once the door closed, he opened his desk drawer and removed a small vial. The coffee would be tested, along with everything else he consumed in the past month. The headache pounded behind his eyes, but his mind was crystal clear. If his suspicions proved correct, there would be no mercy. He hadn't built his empire by being forgiving of betrayal. His phone lit up with another message, this time from Dr. Thorne. Reviewed your previous labs. Pattern emerging. Urgent, we meet sooner. Can you come now? Jax texted back his confirmation and stood, straightening his tie. Whatever game his wife and supposed best friend were playing, they'd soon learn why even his allies feared crossing him. He took one last look at the garden below. Eleanor was still there, now standing too close to Preston as they examined some floral arrangement. His daughter emerged from the house to join them, and Jax watched as the three of them formed a tight circle, heads bent together in conversation. The perfect picture of family and friendship. His lip curled in contempt. Let them plot. Let them think they had the upper hand. He'd wait, he'd watch, and when the time came, he'd strike with the ruthless efficiency that had made him both famous and feared in the business world. After all, a serpent is most dangerous when it appears to be sleeping. The sterile halls of St. Michael's Medical Center always reminded Jax of a chessboard. Everything in black and white, pieces moving according to predetermined patterns. Today, however, the patterns were revealing a deadly game. Dr. Eris Thorne spread several lab reports across his desk, his usually steady hands betraying a slight tremor. Look at these markers, Jax. The elevated levels, the systematic deterioration. This isn't stress, it's poison. Jax's voice was calm, detached, as if discussing a business proposal rather than his own attempted harm. A sophisticated one, administered gradually, meant to mimic natural illness. Thorne ran a hand through his graying hair. If I hadn't been tracking your blood work so closely, looking at the progression. He paused. Someone wants you dead, but they want it to look natural. Jax leaned back in his chair, ignoring the now familiar nausea. Can you identify the substance? I'm running more specific tests. But Jax, you need to go to the police. Not yet. His tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. I need you to keep this between us, Eris. Can you do that? Thorne hesitated. As your doctor and your friend. As my doctor, you're bound by confidentiality. As my friend, you understand that I need to handle this my way. The doctor sighed. At least let me prescribe something to counteract the symptoms while we identify the specific toxin. Jax nodded, already planning his next move. Send the prescription to a different pharmacy. Not our usual one. Back at his estate, Jax sat in his newly fortified study, watching multiple security feeds. The cameras had been installed 2 days ago, hidden in light fixtures, air vents, and decorative elements. Every room, every hallway, every corner of the grounds was now under surveillance. He clicked through different feeds until he found what he was looking for. Eleanor and Prey in the conservatory, thinking themselves alone. He's getting worse, Eleanor was saying, perched on the edge of a settee. Dr. Thorne called him in again today. Prey paced in front of her. That doctor's too observant. We need to be careful. He suspects something's wrong with Jax's health, but he can't prove anything. Eleanor's laugh was cold. Besides, who would suspect a loving wife and a devoted friend? And Jenna. She's convinced her father is trying to control her through the prenup. It was easy to turn her against him. Eleanor's smile was predatory. Poor dear thinks we're protecting her. Jax's fingers tightened on his armrest, but his face remained impassive. On screen, Prey moved closer to Eleanor, his hand sliding along her shoulder. How much longer? A few more weeks. The insurance policy is ironclad. As long as his death appears natural. Eleanor leaned into Prey's touch. Once he's gone, we'll have everything. His money, his company, his life, and each other, Prey added, pulling her closer. Jax switched to another feed, Jenna's sitting room. His daughter was on the phone, her voice animated. Mom says Daddy's just being controlling, trying to protect his precious money even after he's gone. A pause. I know, right? Like he's been acting so weird lately, all suspicious and paranoid. Mom says that's how he always gets when he feels like he's losing control. Another feed, the kitchen. The cook was preparing dinner, but Jax's attention was on Eleanor's personal assistant, who was carefully adding something to a container of coffee grounds. Jax opened his laptop and began typing. Within hours, copies of every incriminating video would be secured on multiple servers, but he wouldn't expose them. Not yet. First, he needed to understand the full scope of their betrayal. His phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. Darling, you missed dinner again. Should I have something sent up? He typed back. No need. Just tea. Minutes later, there was a knock at his study door. It was Maria again, carrying a tea tray. Mrs. Hollis insists, sir. She's worried about you. Thank you, Maria. He waited until she left before taking the teacup to his private bathroom and emptying it into a specimen container. It would join the growing collection of samples being analyzed at a private lab. His phone buzzed again. Dr. Thorne. Lab results back. Confirmation of sustained arsenic exposure. Jax, we need to contact authorities. Jax deleted the message. The authorities would have their role to play, but not yet. First, he would watch his would-be murderers dig their own graves. Every conversation, every secret meeting, every poisoned cup of coffee, all of it documented, time-stamped, and archived. He pulled up the security feed again. Eleanor was in their bedroom now, speaking quietly on her phone. Everything's proceeding as planned, she was saying. The doctors are suspicious, but it doesn't matter. By the time anyone figures it out, it'll be too late. She laughed softly. Don't worry, darling. Soon, we'll never have to hide again. Jax's expression hardened. They thought him weak, thought they could destroy him slowly and inherit his empire. They didn't understand what he was capable of. He hadn't clawed his way up from nothing. hadn't built a technology empire through luck or kindness. He opened his safe and removed a thick folder. Documentation of every project, every deal, every secret Preston Pray Cole had been involved in over the years. His supposed friend had no idea how much dirt Jax had accumulated. Insurance, he'd always called it. Another video feed caught his attention. Jenna entering Pray's office in the East Wing. Uncle Preston. Her voice was small, uncertain. I'm not sure about this anymore. What if we're wrong about Dad? Pray's response was smooth, practiced. Your father's a controlling man, Jenna. He's always been this way. Why do you think your mother's been so unhappy? Why do you think he's forcing this prenup on you? He doesn't trust anyone, doesn't want anyone else to have power. But think about your future, your happiness. Your mother and I just want to protect you from his manipulation. Jax watched his daughter's resolve crumble under Pray's influence. His hand clenched into a fist, but his face remained eerily calm. They'd corrupted his own child, turned her against him with lies and manipulation. He pulled up another document on his computer, the draft of Jenna's prenup. With a few keystrokes, he made it even more restrictive. Let them think their manipulation was working. Let them believe they were breaking his trust in his daughter. The cameras kept recording, documenting every secret meeting, every whispered conversation, every act of betrayal. In his study, Jax Hollis watched it all, his expression growing colder with each revelation. They thought they were orchestrating his death. They didn't realize they were witnesses to their own destruction. The morning of Jenna's wedding dawned bright and clear. In his private dressing room, Jax Hollis adjusted his bow tie with steady hands, despite the tremors of weakness running through his body. Months of careful observation and documentation had led to this moment. A knock at the door. Dad, Jenna's voice. Can I come in? Of course, Princess. The old endurement felt bitter on his tongue. She entered in a flutter of white silk and lace, already in her wedding dress. She looked so much like Eleanor had 25 years ago. The same delicate features, the same graceful movements, the same capacity for betrayal. You look beautiful, he said, and meant it despite everything. Daddy, she twisted her hands together. About the prenup. Still not up for discussion. His tone was final. Mom says, your mother says a lot of things. He turned to face her fully. Tell me, Jenna, what else does your mother say about me? She flushed, guilt flickering across her face before she masked it. Another trait inherited from Eleanor. I don't know what you mean. No. He stepped closer, his imposing frame making her take an instinctive step back. Nothing about how controlling I am, how I'm trying to manipulate you, how I'm just a paranoid old man who doesn't trust anyone. Jenna's eyes widened. Have you been spying on us? Interesting choice of words. His voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath it. Not me or Mom, but us, including Preston in that group. Are we? Uncle Preston has always looked out for me, she said defensively. I understand. What exactly does Preston understand, Jenna? Jax interrupted, watching her face carefully. What conversations have you been part of? Before she could respond, another knock came at the door. Eleanor entered, resplendent in a designer mother-of-the-bride dress. There you are. Jenna, the photographer is waiting. She paused, noting the tension in the room. Is everything all right? Perfect, Jax replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. Just having a father-daughter chat before the ceremony. Well, it'll have to wait. We're on a schedule. Eleanor held out her hand to Jenna. Come, darling. Jax watched them leave, noting how Jenna practically ran to her mother's side. He waited a few moments before picking up his phone. Is everything ready? Yes, sir, his security chief responded. The video system is set up exactly as you specified. We can trigger it on your signal. Good. He ended the call and took a slow breath, fighting another wave of nausea. One final act to play. The ceremony itself was a blur of music, flowers, and rehearsed words. Jax played his part perfectly. the proud father walking his daughter down the aisle, smiling for photos, shaking hands with guests. If anyone noticed how he barely touched his champagne during the toasts, they didn't mention it. Finally, it was time for the father of the bride's speech. He approached the microphone set up near the head table, where Eleanor, Prey, and Jenna sat together. The perfect picture of family unity. "When my daughter was young," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the reception hall, "I taught her that trust is earned, not given. That actions have consequences. Betrayal is the one sin I never forgive." He caught the quick glance between Eleanor and Prey. "I have a video I'd like to share," he continued, nodding to his technical team. "A little family history, you might say." The large screens positioned around the reception hall flickered to life. The first clip showed Eleanor and Prey in the conservatory, discussing their plans for his death. Then came footage of Jenna's involvement in secret meetings and whispered conversations about poison and life insurance. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Someone screamed. Jenna jumped to her feet, her face pale. "Dad, stop. You're being dramatic." "Dramatic." His voice cut through the growing chaos. "Like these dramatic readings of my declining health." Another clip played. Eleanor and Prey laughing about his symptoms, discussing dosages, planning their future together. "You're paranoid," Eleanor shouted, but her face had gone ashen. This is manipulated footage." "The police might disagree," Jax replied calmly. "They're particularly interested in the parts about the arsenic." Prey stood up, knocking over his chair. "Jax, let me explain." "Explain what, old friend?" "How you've been close to my wife, planning my murder, turning my daughter against me." His voice remained steady, but his eyes were cold. "Or perhaps you'd like to explain this." New footage appeared. Prey instructing Eleanor's assistant on poison dosages, Jenna nodding along as they discussed the plan, Eleanor accessing his private safe where he kept his will. The room had gone completely silent, except for the damning evidence playing on the screens. Security guards appeared at the exits. In the distance, police sirens wailed. "I trusted you," Jax continued, his gaze sweeping over all three of them. "I gave you everything. And you thought you could destroy me." Jenna burst into tears. "Daddy, please. Don't call me that." He cut her off. "You lost that right when you chose to help them harm me." Eleanor tried to stand. "But you can't prove." "I can prove everything." He gestured to the screens, still playing their betrayal in high definition. "Every meeting, every conversation, every drop of poison. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't fight back?" The police burst in, led by Detective Reyes. As they moved to arrest Eleanor, Prey, and Jenna, Jax remained at the microphone, watching with cold satisfaction. "I warned you once," he said quietly, though his voice still carried. "Betrayal is the one sin I never forgive." He turned away as they were led out in handcuffs, ignoring Jenna's sobs and Eleanor's accusations. The wedding guests sat frozen in shock, watching the scene unfold like some twisted theater production. Jax straightened his tie, nodded to his security team, and walked out of the reception hall with the same powerful stride that had taken him to the top of the business world. Let them scream, let them plead, let them try to explain. He had played the long game, gathered his evidence, and struck when they least expected it. Now they would learn why even his enemies admitted, "You don't cross Jax Hollis," and walk away unscathed. The wedding reception hall had transformed from a celebration of love into a crime scene. Detective Lena Reyes surveyed the chaos, overturned chairs, abandoned champagne glasses, and the lingering echo of shocked gasps from departed guests. "Walk me through the timeline again," she demanded, studying Jax Hollis, who sat perfectly composed despite his obvious physical weakness. "Everything's documented here." Jax handed her a thick folder. "Security footage, medical reports, toxicology screens. Dr. Thorne can confirm the arsenic poisoning." Detective Reyes flipped through the pages, her eyes narrowing. Pretty thorough for someone who claims he only recently discovered the plot. I'm a thorough man, detective. It's how I built my empire. Jax's voice carried no defensiveness, only cold certainty. Ask anyone in the tech industry. I don't move without evidence. And your daughter's involvement. Rise raised an eyebrow. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. His expression remained impassive, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. The videos speak for themselves. The detective watched her officers lead Eleanor, Preston, and Jenna away in handcuffs. Eleanor's mascara had run, leaving black streaks down her perfectly made-up face. "This is ridiculous," she screamed. "Jax, tell them. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding." Jax didn't even turn to look at her. "Daddy, please," Jenna sobbed. "We didn't mean." "Book them," Detective Rice interrupted. "Separate cars, separate stations for processing." She turned back to Jax. "We'll need your full statement." "Of course. My lawyer will meet us at the station." As if summoned by his words, Abigail Sterling strode into the hall, her designer suit as impeccable as her reputation. "Mr. Hollis won't be making any statements tonight." She placed a hand on Jax's shoulder. "My client needs medical attention first. Dr. Thorne is waiting to begin treatment for the poison they've been feeding him." "I can wait," Jax started to say, but Abigail cut him off. "No, you can't. We're doing this by the book." She turned to Detective Rice. "You'll have his full cooperation tomorrow. Tonight, he needs to focus on staying alive." Detective Rice studied them both. "Fine, but I want those medical reports on my desk first thing in the morning." She paused. "And Mr. Hollis, don't leave town." "Where would I go?" Jax's smile was razor sharp. "I have so much work to do right here." Once the detective left, Abigail pulled out her tablet. "Speaking of work, we need to move quickly. I've already drafted the paperwork to freeze Eleanor's accounts and revoke Preston's access to the company systems." "Good. What about Jenna's trust fund?" "Already locked down." "But Jax." Abigail hesitated. "She's still your daughter." "No." His voice was flat. "My daughter died the moment she chose to help them harm me. Execute everything as planned." They moved to his home office, where Abigail began laying out documents. "I've prepared injunctions against all their assets. Eleanor won't be able to access any accounts, properties, or investments. Preston's shares in the company will be frozen pending investigation." "Not enough." Jax pulled up his computer. "I want Preston's entire financial empire dismantled. Every project, every investment, every business connection. Destroy it all. That could take months. Then we better start now." He began typing. "Contact every major partner, every board member. Let them know what happened here tonight. Forward them copies of the security footage, especially the parts about them planning to take over the company after my natural death." Abigail nodded, already making calls. Within hours, Preston's carefully built network began to crumble. Board members distanced themselves, partners pulled out of deals, and investors demanded emergency meetings. "The media's already getting wind of it," Abigail reported, showing Jax her phone. "Headlines are starting to appear. Tech mogul's wife and murder plot. Wedding day betrayal. Daughter conspires in father's death." "Good." Jax leaned back, ignoring the tremors in his hands, the aftereffects of the poison. "Let them run with it. No comments, no denials. Just let the evidence speak for itself." Dr. Thorne arrived with his medical bag. "We need to start the chelation therapy immediately." "In a minute," Jax replied, reviewing more documents. "Abigail, make sure the divorce papers are filed first thing tomorrow. I want everything ready before Eleanor can speak to a lawyer." "Already prepared," she said, pulling out another folder. "I've included evidence of the affair and attempted harm. She won't get a penny. And Jenna's inheritance. As requested, everything goes to charity. Specifically, organizations helping victims of family abuse and betrayal." Abigail's voice softened slightly. "Are you sure about this?" Jax's expression could have been carved from stone. My daughter conspired to harm me for money. Let her inheritance help people who've suffered similar betrayals. Dr. Thorne began setting up the treatment. This will help flush the arsenic from your system, but you need rest. Later, Jax turned back to his computer. Preston has a deal closing in Singapore next week. Make sure it falls through. I want his investors to pull out publicly. Let everyone see the rats leaving the sinking ship. Jax, Abigail warned, we need to be careful. If we're too aggressive. No, Jax cut her off. They tried to harm me slowly, painfully, while pretending to love me, while my own daughter watched and helped. There's no such thing as too aggressive anymore. His phone buzzed, Detective Rice requesting another interview. He forwarded it to Abigail without comment. I'll handle it, she said. Focus on getting the poison out of your system. Let me worry about the legal side. But Jax was already pulling up more files, more evidence, more ammunition to use against those who had betrayed him. The tremors in his hands might slow him down, but nothing would stop him now. He had built his empire from nothing once before. Now he would rebuild it again. Stronger, more ruthless, purged of every trace of those who had tried to destroy him. Let them rot in jail cells while I dismantle everything they had ever loved. This was just the beginning. 2 weeks after the wedding, Jax sat in his office at Hollis Tech headquarters, watching multiple news feeds on his wall of screens. Each one told a different part of the same story. His story, carefully crafted and strategically leaked to create maximum impact. Eleanor Hollis denied bail in murder plot. Tech giant Preston Cole's empire crumbles amid scandal. Society princess turned conspirator. Genevieve Hollis fall from grace. His assistant entered with a tablet. Sir, Mrs. Hollis' lawyer is requesting a meeting. They're offering a deal. No deals, Jax replied without looking away from the screens. Forward everything to Abigail. And the press. Still requesting interviews. He paused. Let them speculate. The evidence speaks for itself. He pulled up surveillance footage from the women's detention center where Eleanor was being held. His wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, sat alone in a standard-issue jumpsuit. Her designer clothes and perfect makeup replaced by harsh fluorescent lighting and dark circles under her eyes. Another screen showed Preston in his holding cell, pacing like a caged animal. His once immaculate suit was rumpled, his charismatic smile replaced by desperate fear as he watched his business empire collapse in real time. A third feed displayed Jenna, separated from both her parents, her wedding dress exchanged for prison orange. She had been crying. She was always crying now. But no one came to comfort her. Jax's phone rang. A private number he recognized. Report. The board meeting is planned. His contact said. Coal Industries stock is in free fall. Major shareholders are jumping ship. Preston's kingdom is burning. Good. What about the overseas accounts? Frozen, as requested. His partners in Singapore are distancing themselves. The London office is shutting down. Dubai's pulling out of all joint ventures. Jax ended the call and pulled up another document, a press release draft from Coal Industries Board announcing Preston's immediate removal as CEO. He made a few edits, strengthening the language of condemnation, then sent it back to his contact. His assistant returned. Sir, Detective Rice is here. Send her in. The detective entered, looking less hostile than during their last meeting. Mr. Hollis, you've been busy. Just protecting my interests, detective. By systematically destroying your enemies. She sat without waiting for an invitation. The evidence against them is solid. Why not let the justice system handle it? The justice system will handle the criminal charges. Jax's voice was calm. Reasonable. I'm handling the rest. The rest being their complete financial and social destruction. Actions have consequences, he said simply. He turned one screen toward her, showing Eleanor's latest bail hearing. They tried to harm me slowly, painfully, while pretending to love me. Did you expect me to simply forgive and forget? No, Rise admitted. But then you understand each other. She folded her arms. I have something you might find interesting. Financial records showing this isn't the first time Preston and Eleanor have conspired together. Would you like to see their previous victims? Detective Reyes leafed through the thick file he handed her. Previous victims. Jax leaned back in his chair, his eyes cold. Strange how their spouses always seem to die from natural causes after changing their wills. She studied the documents, her expression hardening. This is extensive. I'm thorough, Jax replied. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. After she left, he pulled up his next project. A detailed expose by a major financial newspaper. It would reveal every questionable deal, every shady transaction Preston had ever made. By the time it was published, no reputable business would touch him with a 10-foot pole. His phone buzzed with a text from Abigail. Eleanor requesting plea deal. Says she'll testify against Preston. No deals, he texted back. Let them tear each other apart. Another screenshot appeared. Jenna's tearful interview with her court-appointed lawyer. She was trying to claim she had been manipulated, that she didn't understand what was happening. The lawyer looked skeptical. Jax watched his daughter cry for a moment, remembering when she was small, when he would have moved heaven and earth to stop her tears. Now he felt nothing but cold satisfaction. His assistant appeared again. Sir, the team from the Times is here for your exclusive interview. Send them in. He stood, straightening his tie. Time to present my side of the story. The betrayed husband and father. The victim who had uncovered a deadly plot. Let the public see my strength, my resilience. Let them witness how I had survived and thrived despite it all. Let Eleanor read it in her cell, alone and abandoned. Let Preston watch his reputation crumble while his empire burned. Let Jenna see what she had thrown away for greed and manipulation. This was his revenge, not swift and violent, but slow and meticulous, destroying them piece by piece, just as they had tried to destroy him. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.